Hello people of the internet, my name is Atlas, and I am bringing you my very first Deltarune Theory video. In this video I plan on answering a question Deltarune fans have been asking themselves for quite some time. Who is Mike? Before we move into more speculative territory, it's important that we first establish what we know about Mike. He was first mentioned in Spamton's shop after selecting the Friends prompt, after which Spamton tells Kris that they're already friends and that they don't need anyone else, including easels and CRTs. This is likely referring to Swatch and Tenna. He then, in brackets, say that they don't need Mike, before getting serious and repeating the name one more time. He tells Kris not to believe what the man on TV says and that he's a criminal, seemingly translating to something along the lines of "don't believe what Tenna says about Mike." Later on, in the violent ending to the normal route Spamton fight, he mentions Mike once more, asking him if he's getting all of this as he transforms, implying that along with being friends, the two work together, and that Mike recorded Spamton in some way, be it visually or audibly. Moving on to the Spamton sweepstakes, Mike gets two more mentions. When someone asks who he was, Spamton refuses to answer, assuming them to be part of Tenna's crew. He tells them that they know nothing about Mike and that's the way it's gonna stay. This interaction implies that Tenna is looking for Mike for one reason or another, and that Mike appears to be hiding or on the run. The ending also reads as being a bit more personal, which could suggest there's more to this conflict than simply business. Finally, Spamton mentions Mike one last time on the Damn You Tenna page, where he says everyone will pay except Mike. All these lines emphasize that despite everything, Spamton cares for Mike, which says a lot since he seems to hate literally everyone else he has interacted with in the past. So that brings us to the main point of the video. I have brought together three candidates for who, or perhaps I should say what, Mike could be, each being an interpretation fans have had in the past. I will go over each discussing their pros and cons, for ultimately coming to conclusion on which item will turn into Mike. To begin, we have the microwave. While it's definitely the least popular candidate out of those I have chosen, that's not to say it has no merit. For one, we at least know it's in the Dreamer household, so the prospect of it turning into a darkener seems fairly reasonable. Furthermore, we know that there will be cooking related items in the Dark World because of the Ginger Guard. We also see a cooking show on the TV in Chapter 2, and both Toriel and Undyne, most likely Lighteners to appear in Chapter 3, are associated with cooking. However, there are several issues that lead me to believe this option is not particularly likely. For one, the existence of a cooking show is still a pretty loose connection for a microwave to have to a TV, and there's literally no connection present between it and spam emails. The microwave is also completely out in the open, which seems strange if Mike is supposedly in hiding. The microwave is also incapable of recording, which is one of the few things we know that Mike does. And I think most importantly, there's no particular reason the cooking show character has to be Mike or the microwave. It could easily be something like a pan or the unfinished pie. There just isn't much connecting Mike to the concept specifically, so unfortunately I don't think this is Mike. Moving on, we have perhaps the most popular candidate of the three, a microphone. And this makes sense. A microphone does have a strong association with TV, the theme of Chapter 3. And while the name Mike works as a pun for each of these characters, it works best here given Mike is literally short for microphone. Microphones also record audio which aligns with what Spamton says while he's transforming. And finally, Asriel is a known singer, which could explain why the Dreamers would have a microphone. However, this option also has its fair share of weaknesses. Again, it has little to no connection to spam emails, nor do we have any reason to believe it was ever brought to the computer lab. Its very existence is also questionable at best. We haven't seen it in the house at all, and while that works with the idea of it being in hiding, it could also mean that it just isn't there. This is worsened by the fact that if Asriel had a microphone, there's a good chance that he'd take it to college, and ultimately, if it was used for singing, its connection to TV would be weakened a little. That brings us to our final candidate and my personal belief, Mike the phone. Specifically, Kris's phone. Unlike the other options, a phone can indeed interact with spam emails, explaining Mike's connection with Spamton. This would also explain the large amount of phone imagery associated with Spamton's character. Kris's phone is also in the perfect middle ground of visibility to be Mike, We know it's in the Dreamer household when the fountain is created, however, it is concealed from Tenna by being in Kris's pocket. A phone can also record both audio and visuals, fitting what Spamton says about Mike at the end of his fight. Kris's phone is portable, they bring it everywhere they go, meaning that if they went to the computer lab before the events of the game, this too could explain Mike and Spamton's interactions. Spamton was, of course, helped through phone calls, which are also associated with Gaster, who also seems connected to all of this. There's also the landline phone in Kris's house, which, while unlikely to be a Darkner as it's attached to the wall, could make for a nice Mike-related area if he's a phone. Finally, in the Undertale art book, Toby mentions that originally Frisk's phone was going to be its own character and their friend, which could have been repurposed for Deltarune. When it comes to the problems with this idea, admittedly, a phone isn't majorly connected to TV. There are some commercials that ask you to call certain numbers, and in the modern day, you can watch TV on your phone, but there isn't much more to it than that. There's also the fact that Kris's phone is yet to transform, despite having already been in the Dark World. And of course, Toby saying the phone being alive was a really bad idea in the art book. However, I want to explore some of these concepts a bit more since this is the main point of the video. To begin, I'm sure some people will argue that the reason that Spamton is associated with phones to such a degree is due to spam calls. However, Spamton very specifically is the embodiment of spam emails. Interestingly, he does seem to embody all spam emails, even those not printed out, as shown from this question and the Spamton Q&A. However, there's no indication that it goes beyond that. You also may be wondering what I meant by Gaster being associated with phones. In which case, I ask you to look at the 3 phone-related fun events from Undertale, and of course the garbage noise that comes to the phone speakers in the Dark World. Finally, I'd like to address that bad idea comment Toby made, as I believe this has a lot to do with the type of game Undertale is, and the reasons it wouldn't work there don't apply to Deltarune. Undertale is a game about monsters. Even the robot we meet is a ghost, and so it wouldn't really fit to have a randomly living inanimate object in the game. Meanwhile, Deltarune is all about living inanimate objects. In fact, the concept Toby mentions is already extremely similar to what we've seen with Rouxls, Lancer, and Starwalker as they enter our key items, a section the phone itself finds itself in. Furthermore, the animation of Lancer exiting our inventory, and the unused animation of him and Rouxls entering it, shows the characters in their item forms, which could explain why the phone seemingly hasn't transformed yet, since in our inventory they'd appear as a normal item. And so, I guess that's it, huh? Not really sure how to end this, so... If you thought this theory was strange before, just wait, because it's about to get even weirder. It's time for Pocket Parallel Theory. To begin, we'll start with the easy one, Susie and Lancer, the bad guys. While this connection between these characters is likely clear to most of you, it may go deeper than you initially thought. Both have shadowed faces, call themselves bad guys, eat strange foods, have questionable home lives, and have similar fight-themed names in versus Lancer and versus Susie. They're misunderstood by those around them, as shown by monsters interpreting Susie's nervousness as intimidation, and Susie thinking Lancer betrayed her, and both are social outcasts, Susie with her peers in hometown and Lancer with his subjects. Moving on to our kinda sad guys, we have Rouxls and Ralsei. Both characters are subservient. Ralsei believes Darkners can only feel fulfilled by helping Lightners, while Rouxls finds purpose in helping evil rulers that oppose the Lightners. Ralsei is genuinely intelligent and well-spoken, while Rouxls attempts to mimic this with a strange old English, ultimately making himself seem even more foolish. Both characters change outfits between chapters. With Ralsei, he takes his hat off and changes the sleeves and symbol on his clothes, while Rouxls puts on a pirate hat and wears an eye patch. They both use light-based magic, and they are both related to the concept of how things are supposed to go. Ralsei through the legend, and Rouxls with the rules card, and his almost predestined failures. This brings us to Noelle and the original Starwalker. While this may seem ridiculous at first, there are some connections that I believe are worth mentioning, especially in the greater context of the other parallels. On the surface level, both characters are mostly associated with yellow, with it being Noelle's icon color and the color of Starwalker. Both have connections to the egg, with Noelle receiving it in cat petters and Starwalker appearing in the room before it. They're both part of their respective groups, but not quite as much as the other members, Noelle not being a part of the legend and Starwalker being optional. Starwalker is a secret character, which relates to Noelle, given her ability to find strange things in the game she plays. This also connects to the fact that both can break the game, be it in a mundane way that Starwalker appears outside of the inventory box, or the much more extreme example of Noelle in the weird route. There's also the fact that the winged Starwalkers look as though they have angel wings. And this is definitely a stretch, but the lines Starwalker has in Chapter 1 could hint at the ending where Kris throws their soul in the birdcage. Perhaps being a reference to Noelle being aware of the player? Maybe? Probably not. With this in mind, I believe the parallels present do support the notion of a pocket pal to parallel Kris, and I think Mike, as their phone, would serve this role perfectly. So then, what can we learn from this? Well, as Kris's parallel, perhaps Mike is being controlled by some greater force, such as Gaster or Tenna. Maybe what happened to Spamton could parallel what happened to Des. Perhaps, like Kris, Mike will be a leader, either to the other Pocket Pals, or to the Chapter 3 Darkners. And maybe, like Kris, they're quiet. That would explain why we haven't heard anything from them yet. And so, finally, we've really reached the end here. I want to thank you all for watching, and... Alright, let's get to Friend. So, does Mike the Phone work with Mike Friend? Kinda, but not really. It would explain how they appear in Chapter 2, and as stated before, phones are connected with Gaster, but it doesn't really work super well with Pocket Theory, and I generally see Friend as being an endgame type of character rather than being from Chapter 3. Then what about Mike Friend on its own? Like the others, it has its up and downs. Mike is mentioned when you select the Friend option in Spamton's shop, and the eyes do imply a connection. Furthermore, we know Friend wants to help someone, perhaps similarly to how Mike helps Spamton, and they do seem secretive like Mike would presumably be. There are some issues though. For example, Kris, Tenna, and Swatch are all also mentioned when you select the Friend prompt, which weakens the connection in my opinion. Friend also wants our help in assisting this person, which would be strange since we've already dealt with Spamton. Friend alone also has a very loose connection to the name Mike, the only real reasoning behind it being that they amplified Spamton's reach like a microphone. Friend also seems to have been unable to help Spamton because they forgot, which feels like something Spamton would be less forgiving about than he is with Mike. There's also the egg inconsistency. For those wondering what I mean, there is evidence to suggest that the person who wrote the letter, and therefore Friend, is actually the man behind the tree. I'll link a video Spookydood made on this in the description if you want to hear more about it in depth. But for the time being, the main thing you need to know is the way the letter is written lines up with the narration related to the Eggman. However, if Friend is the Eggman, it seems unlikely that they're Mike, as the way Spamton talks about these subjects is very different, openly talking about the egg, but avoiding talk about Mike. And so, we've reached the end. For real this time. And what have we learned? Well, Mike is a pretty cool name. There's a lot of puns you can make on it, and in my opinion, that's the only thing that counts. Tell your phone things. You'll never know when it's gonna disappear and you'll be living in a garbage can. Five Nights at Icy's. I mean, just think about it. It makes sense. Mike, purple guy, Icy's, a sixth thing. Based on the evidence I presented, I believe Mike is most likely Kris's phone. This would explain why Mike appears to be missing and why Kris's phone is yet to be altered by the Dark World. It also explains the prominence of phones related to Spamton despite the fact that he represents emails, not calls. Kris's phone also makes the perfect candidate to complete Pocket Parallel Theory, given the connections they already have and the fact they're already in their inventory. While it is not impossible that Friend and Mike are one and the same, I currently do not believe we have enough evidence to come to this conclusion definitively, and I think it has its issues. That being said, I'm sure this also applies to my own theory, and I highly encourage you to come to your own conclusions and participate in active discussion and healthy criticism. Be kind, drink water, and remember to floss. And finally, and most importantly, Noelle is literally Starwalker. Thank you all for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember, the impossible is possible. All you gotta do is make it so. Oh, and like and subscribe, whatever, leave a comment, you know, that sort of thing. Thanks.